Madison Harper stood at the altar in white lace and borrowed pearls, smiling at the man she was moments from marrying, unaware that Ryan Delaney, calm and composed in his tailored suit, was about to expose her darkest secret in front of everyone. They knew. By the end of the ceremony, one of them would vanish, another would bleed, and the truth would leave a town stunned and a love story shattered in blood. Ryan Delaney and Madison Harper were the kind of couple people envied. Their love story seemed straight out of a movie. High school sweethearts who had grown up together in the quiet town of Wexley. Ryan, known for his dedication as a firefighter, was tall, steady, and dependable. He was the kind of man who remembered birthdays, brought flowers just because, and always showed up when it mattered. Madison, with her gentle smile and calm voice, was a first-grade teacher who had a reputation for kindness. She baked cookies for neighbors, volunteered at animal shelters, and seemed to radiate warmth wherever she went. Together, they were adored. Their relationship felt like something timeless and pure, untouched by the chaos of modern life. When Ryan proposed under a canopy of fairy lights behind Madison's childhood home, it felt like the culmination of a love everyone believed in. The engagement photos were published in the local paper, and the town buzzed with excitement for the upcoming wedding. From the outside, everything looked perfect. Their social media pages were filled with happy snapshots, picnics, road trips, moments that showed a couple deeply in love and heading toward a beautiful future. But perfection has a way of masking flaws. It started subtly, things Ryan couldn't quite explain. Madison's phone always seemed to be on silent or flipped screen down. She would leave the room to take calls, sometimes stepping outside or into the bathroom. When Ryan asked who it was, her answers were vague. Just a friend from work, or my cousin asking about the wedding. At first, he accepted it. After all, planning a wedding could be stressful, and she probably needed space. Then came the canceled dinner plans, the late-night errands, the messages she quickly deleted when she thought he wasn't looking. Ryan began to feel it, that quiet tension when someone's hiding something. He didn't want to believe it. Madison had always been honest, always grounded. But the signs kept piling up, and Ryan couldn't ignore them forever. Still, he said nothing. He smiled for photos, met with caterers, and sat through long planning meetings. He convinced himself he was overthinking things, that it was nerves or paranoia. But the feeling didn't go away. It lingered, becoming a weight he carried through each day. He didn't confront her because he didn't want it to be true. If he asked and she confessed, everything they'd built would collapse. Then one morning, just 2 weeks before the wedding, he found it. A plain manila envelope, sitting on the porch with no name, no note. He opened it casually, not expecting anything significant. But what he found inside hit him like a punch to the chest. Dozens of printed photographs, grainy, poorly lit, but unmistakable. Madison with another man, intimate, smiling in a way she hadn't smiled at him in months. Alongside the photos were printouts of messages, some romantic, others vulgar, all filled with the kind of emotion Ryan thought had belonged to them alone. The betrayal was undeniable. He read every message, looked at every picture, and when he was done, he sat still for a long time. There were no tears, just a growing sense of clarity. Ryan knew he had a choice. He could cancel the wedding, confront her in private, walk away from the pain quietly, or he could let the world see what she had done. The latter felt dangerous. It felt dramatic, but it also felt justified. He picked up the envelope and tucked it away, not saying a word to anyone. He would wait. He would smile, pose for more photos, write his vows. But the day of the wedding would not be the fairy tale Madison expected. Ryan wasn't walking into a marriage anymore. He was walking into a reckoning. Ryan kept the envelope hidden in the bottom drawer of his bedside table, beneath old photo albums and leftover wedding brochures. Every night, he opened it and looked through its contents, memorizing the details. He studied the time stamps on the messages, the way Madison smiled in the photos with the other man, the tone of her words, flirty, secretive, deeply affectionate. The man was Daniel Kessler, Ryan's longtime friend and best man. That detail stung more than anything else. Daniel had stood by his side since they were kids. To discover that the two people he trusted most had been betraying him was more than heartbreak. It was humiliation layered with rage. Despite what he knew, Ryan told no one. He didn't confide in his family, didn't confront Madison or Daniel. He carried on like nothing had changed, attending cake tastings, checking in with the florist, and finalizing the seating chart with Madison as if he were still looking forward to the wedding. Friends noticed he was quieter than usual, but he explained it away as stress. Even Daniel didn't seem to suspect anything. He joked with Ryan during the bachelor party and helped him pick out cufflinks the week before the ceremony. Ryan smiled through it all, hiding the truth behind a practiced calm. Inside, he was planning something. Not something violent, not yet. But he knew he wanted them to feel what he felt. He wanted to ruin the image they'd built, the happy couple, the loyal best friend. He wanted the truth out in the open. So he began laying the groundwork. He scanned every photo and text, compiled them onto a flash drive, and quietly arranged for a projector to be installed at the reception hall. He said it was for a wedding slideshow, and no one questioned it. Madison was too distracted with last-minute details to notice anything strange. In the final days leading up to the wedding, Ryan found himself floating between two versions of himself. Outwardly, he was the devoted groom, smiling for family photos and helping Madison rehearse her vows. Inwardly, he was cold and detached, counting the hours until the truth would be revealed. He wasn't sure how it would unfold, whether Madison would cry, whether Daniel would run, but he knew something would break that day. He was no longer thinking about a future with Madison. He was thinking about exposing her. On the night before the wedding, Ryan barely slept. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence of the house. Madison was asleep beside him, unaware of what awaited her. Ryan got up quietly and walked through each room, checking the final details of his plan. The flash drive was safely in his jacket pocket. The slideshow was cued and ready. All he had to do now was wait for the moment. Morning came, and with it, a wave of artificial joy. The house filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the rustle of fabric as bridesmaids and groomsmen prepared. Madison looked radiant, glowing, in her white dress, surrounded by compliments and cameras. Ryan, dressed in a tailored navy suit, smiled politely and posed for pictures, but his mind was elsewhere. He wasn't thinking about vows or first dances. He was thinking about the faces in the crowd when the truth came out. He imagined the gasps, the shock, the whispers as the limousine pulled up to the church. Madison clutched his hand and whispered how happy she was. Ryan nodded, his face blank. The sun was shining, the day was beautiful, and everything looked picture perfect on the surface. But deep beneath the polished exterior, something dark was waiting to erupt. Ryan stepped out of the car and looked at the church ahead, flowers adorning the entrance, smiling guests waving from the steps. It was the stage for what would become the most unforgettable moment of their lives, and Ryan was ready. The church was packed with family, friends, co-workers, and neighbors. Everyone who had watched Ryan and Madison's love story unfold over the years. Rows of guests sat expectantly on polished wooden pews, surrounded by floral arrangements and soft candlelight. A string quartet played quietly in the corner as the ceremony prepared to begin. It was everything a bride could hope for. Beautiful, elegant, filled with people smiling and whispering about how perfect the couple looked together. Ryan stood at the altar, hands folded, wearing a calm expression that betrayed none of what was about to happen. He scanned the room slowly, eyes moving from his parents to Madison's cousins, to Daniel, who stood nearby in a matching suit. grinning as if nothing was wrong. Ryan felt a familiar surge of rage, but forced it back down. He had rehearsed this moment 100 times in his head. He couldn't afford to crack now. When the music shifted and the church doors opened, everyone turned. Madison entered, radiant in her white gown, her face glowing with joy. She moved down the aisle gracefully, her arm hooked through her father's, smiling at guests as she passed. Ryan watched her closely. She looked genuinely happy, unaware. The betrayal she carried so easily made him sick to his stomach, but he kept his composure. Let her have her moment, he thought. It would be her last one. As Madison joined him at the altar, the officiant welcomed everyone and began the ceremony. The words were soft, reverent, filled with promises. The crowd grew still as he turned to face the guests. For a second, no one moved. Ryan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small remote. Then he gestured toward the screen set up near the altar, one that guests had assumed would display a slideshow of photos or maybe a video montage of the couple's memories. Instead, the screen flickered to life with a set of grainy images. The first photo showed Madison and Daniel, alone in a car, kissing. Gasps echoed through the church. Then more photos appeared. Hotel rooms, private moments, snapshots of stolen time. The images gave way to screenshots of text messages. Intimate, raw messages filled with confessions, secrets, and plans to leave after the wedding. No one spoke. The silence was crushing. Madison stood frozen beside Ryan, her face drained of color. Daniel took a step back, his eyes wide in disbelief. Guests turned to look at him, murmurs rising as shock turned into confusion, then anger. Madison tried to speak, but no words came. She looked around helplessly, like a child lost in a crowd. Ryan stood still, not looking at either of them. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He simply let the truth do its work. After the final message flashed on the screen, he placed the remote down on the altar and walked out of the church without a word. He didn't look back. Behind him, chaos erupted. Madison collapsed into a pew, shaking. Her father tried to comfort her, but she pushed him away. Daniel bolted from the altar and disappeared out the side exit. Guests argued, some shouting, others whispering in disbelief. The officiant stood stunned, unsure of what to do. The wedding was over. Not with vows or kisses, but with betrayal laid bare for all to see. Ryan's quiet reveal shattered everything, and it was only the beginning. The wedding venue emptied quickly after Ryan's departure. What had started as a day of celebration had ended in silence, broken only by the occasional hushed conversation or the click of heels leaving the church. Madison sat motionless in the front pew, her dress wrinkled and makeup smeared, staring blankly at the floor. Her bouquet had slipped from her hands and lay discarded beside her. Her parents hovered nearby, unsure of how to help. Nothing they said seemed to reach her. Meanwhile, Daniel Kessler had vanished. Some guests claimed they saw him run behind the church. Others thought he drove off. No one was certain. His phone went unanswered, and his car was no longer in the parking lot. Word of the scandal spread quickly through Wexley, and by that evening, it had become the only topic of conversation. Ryan, however, had kept his distance. He hadn't returned home, hadn't called anyone, hadn't posted a single thing. The last anyone saw of him was his calm exit from the church. The following morning, things took an even darker turn. A group of teenagers hiking in the woods behind the Harper estate stumbled upon a grisly sight. A man's body face down near the edge of the trees, blood staining the fallen leaves around him. It was Daniel. He had been stabbed multiple times, the wounds deep and erratic. Nearby, lying half-buried beneath a log, was a kitchen knife, its wooden handle worn but identifiable. Investigators quickly cordoned off the area, and soon, the police had a clear target. The knife was traced back to a knife block from Ryan's home. part of a distinct set he'd been gifted by Madison on their second anniversary. The match was confirmed, but Ryan couldn't be located. Calls to his phone went straight to voicemail. His apartment was untouched, but his car was missing. Friends said they hadn't seen or heard from him since the wedding. To some, it seemed obvious. He had found out about the affair, exposed it, then killed Daniel in a fit of rage and disappeared. The pieces appeared to fit. Then came another surprise. Madison, still in shock, was found in her parents' home that same morning, sitting on the floor in her wedding dress, stained with what appeared to be blood. A neighbor had stopped by to check on her and immediately called the police. Madison was taken into custody without resistance, though she didn't speak a word. She didn't ask questions. She didn't cry. She just stared into space, distant and unresponsive. Blood tests were run. Toxicology reports were clean. No drugs, no alcohol. Her hands bore faint bruises, and small scratches ran along her forearms. The police believed she had been involved in a struggle. Forensics found fibers from her dress on Daniel's clothing, further linking her to the scene. And yet, there was no confession, no explanation. Madison simply remained silent. Public opinion began to fracture. Some believed Ryan had killed Daniel and gone on the run. Others speculated that Madison, distraught and humiliated, had confronted Daniel and stabbed him in anger or fear. A third theory emerged, one that suggested the entire incident had been orchestrated by Ryan from the beginning. That maybe he had lured Daniel into the woods and set things up to frame Madison, ensuring that both betrayers suffered. Detectives worked day and night, piecing together timelines, analyzing security footage, and questioning anyone connected to the couple. But no clear answers emerged. The only certainty was that Daniel Kessler was dead, Ryan Delaney was missing, and Madison Harper was at the center of it all, silent, broken, and carrying the weight of something no one else could yet understand. The town of Wexley, once quiet and ordinary, was now haunted by secrets too tangled to unravel. And the truth, whatever it was, had not yet come to light. The investigation dragged on for weeks. Madison remained in custody under psychiatric observation. She didn't ask for a lawyer. She didn't speak to her parents or respond to detectives. Every attempt to question her was met with the same dull, vacant stare. It wasn't resistance. It was as if something inside her had shut down completely. A court-ordered evaluation declared her mentally unfit for formal interrogation, and she was moved to a secure psychiatric facility outside of Wexley. The media latched onto the story. It had everything: love, betrayal, public humiliation, and murder. News vans parked outside the church, the Harper home, and even Daniel's apartment. Reporters interviewed anyone with the faintest connection to the trio. Still, no solid leads emerged about Ryan's whereabouts. His car hadn't been spotted, his credit cards weren't used, and there were no known connections that suggested where he might have gone. For many, it felt like he had simply vanished into thin air. Then, a breakthrough came from an unexpected place. During a routine sweep of the Harper estate, detectives came across a hidden camera tucked behind a vent in the guest bedroom. It was small, barely visible, and wired to a micro SD card hidden inside a wall socket. It hadn't been discovered earlier because the room hadn't been considered part of the crime scene. But a technician tracing electrical signals noticed a strange wiring pattern and followed it. What they found changed everything. The footage covered several weeks leading up to the wedding. Most of it was unremarkable: quiet moments, conversations, Madison getting ready for bed. But on the night before the ceremony, the camera captured something different. Daniel was in the room. He and Madison were arguing. There was no sound, but their body language was tense and frantic. Madison paced the room while Daniel blocked the door. At one point, he grabbed her arm, and she shoved him away. Then she collapsed onto the bed, holding her head in her hands. He stood over her, gesturing wildly. then left abruptly. But the most important detail came from the wedding day itself. Hours before the ceremony, Daniel was caught entering the woods behind the estate. The timestamp placed him there long before anyone else had arrived at the venue. He was carrying a small cloth-wrapped bundle. Detectives zoomed in. The shape of the bundle and the way he gripped it closely resembled the knife found at the murder scene. He had gone into the woods with it. Before the humiliation at the church, before the fallout, it suggested a different story. Daniel may have gone there to hide the weapon in advance, or he may have intended to confront someone after the ceremony. Either way, it made one thing clear. The killing hadn't been the spontaneous result of the wedding's collapse. Something else had been planned. Investigators revisited the case with this new perspective. It now appeared that Daniel, possibly fearing exposure, had armed himself in anticipation of Ryan's reaction. When the truth was revealed and Daniel fled the church, Madison followed him, not to hurt him, but perhaps to beg for answers or plead for him to take responsibility. Somewhere in that confrontation, violence broke out. The injuries on Madison's arms supported the theory of a struggle. Her trauma, her silence, they all pointed towards self-defense. Eventually, the charges against her were dropped. She was not declared guilty, nor fully innocent, just damaged, caught in the center of a tragedy shaped by lies and betrayal. Ryan Delaney, however, was never found. Some believed he had taken his own life. Others thought he disappeared by choice, unwilling to face the wreckage he had left behind. The case faded slowly from headlines, but Wexley never forgot. The church never hosted another wedding. The woods behind the Harper home were fenced off and left untouched. And Madison Harper, once the town's sweetheart, became a ghost in her own story, a reminder of how love, when twisted by secrets, can lead to something far more dangerous than heartbreak.